We're going to go ahead and get started. So good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. First, I want to thank the sponsors of this event. Really exciting. This is the first event that is being co-sponsored by the Institute for Agroecology, the Center for Sustainable Agriculture from UVM Extension, also others from UVM Extension, through Becky, and the Department of Agriculture, Landscape, and Environment. So we all came together. And I'm excited too because we are starting to also engage more in the ecological, biophysical side of agroecology. The Institute's really strong on the social and the political agroecology side, but we want to do also that ecological side. And interestingly enough, when Alexandros first contacted me to do his Fulbright, I thought, oh, he's going to come and do weed agroecology. That's great. It supports that biophysical bent. But he actually wanted to come to do more of his policy interests. Transdisciplinary. So it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Alexandros Tataridas, who is a Fulbright visiting scholar from Greece at the Institute for Agroecology. He is currently a researcher who works at the Center for Functional Ecology at the University of Coimbra in Portugal. Also, the center is also a sponsor of the talk. He holds a PhD in agronomy and weed science and specializes in the integrated management of invasive alien plants. Alexandros is also very passionate in the last few years about the science policy interface as related to agroecology. And his Fulbright project, as a Fulbright scientist, you have to have a project, is to compare agroecology policies between the US and Europe. He's going to give a talk about that tomorrow. Yeah. And currently, he serves as the scientific project manager of the Horizon Europe project, Agroecology for Weeds, or GOOD project. And today, he will be sharing some of his work on weed agroecology in Europe with some insights on integrated weed management. Thank you so much, Elsa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ernesto, and I would like to thank all of the sponsors today. You mentioned everyone, so I will go straight to the presentation. And today, I'm going to share with you some insights and some thoughts and case studies that we test and explore in Europe related to agroecological weed management. I am a weed scientist. I'm coming from Greece. My bachelor was in agronomy, my master in sustainable agriculture and certification, and my PhD in agronomy and weed science. And I focused on invasive alien plant, if you want to call it plant invasions, biological invasions, but my focus was on integrated management of invasive species. So let's say, and just to confess that I belonged to the conventional world. I belong to the crop protection world. I mean, we were testing herbicides. I know a lot about the crop protection industry and how these synthetic chemical inputs work and what are their side effects. And we will talk about them in a few moments. But then I discovered agroecology. How and why? The stimulus was the European Union and Commission directives, because they wanted to make a Green Deal. They call it the European Green Deal. I don't know if you are familiar with the European directives, laws, and regulations. We will talk a bit about them later on, but this was the stimulus, because agroecology is something that evolves in the global south. I don't like the terminology global south, global north, but as most of people say, it started from global south, and now it is transferred, it migrates to the north, and we learn from the global south. So I'm the leader of the Forum for Agroecological Studies and Transitions. This is a brand new unit at the Center for Functional Ecology at the University of Coimbra in Portugal. And we have a vision, and the vision is to make a triangle to connect Europe with the Americas, North and Latin America, and Africa. Of course, we build on the again, apologies for the terminology, ex-colonies of Portugal, because they have connections. And we try to connect with all these people and make a hub, a research and innovation hub. So I moved to Portugal, and now we are working exclusively on agroecology with my team, on agroecological transitions in particular. And we're trying to work on the science policy society interface. Last year, I was saying that I'm passionate about the science policy interface. This year, I started saying that I'm passionate about the science policy society interface, because without people and analyzing their behavior, working with them, co-creating with them, without all of these elements, we cannot have these transitions that we want. The socially just food systems, the agri-food sustainable transformations, and all these things that we are all fighting for. This is the project that I brought here with the kind approval and acceptance from Ernesto and the Institute for Agroecology. We call it Use Agroecology. I don't know if you like acronyms, but I think I'm good in acronyms. We have the good project, which is Agroecology for Weeds, but in social media, we call it Agroecology is good. So we want to transfer the message that agroecology is something new, fresh. It's not co-opted yet. They didn't conquer. They didn't win this battle. I mean, our opponents. I'm not referring to someone specific. So we want to, we want to say to people that agroecology is good and to use agroecology. So my presence here has two paths. The first path is to explore the agroecological transitions in the US, the United States of America, and Europe. Benchmark, compare, find similarities, differences, and finally draft some policy recommendations. Because I have connections with some European units in Brussels, also with some national governments in Europe. So we want to bring this on the table to have synergies, because it's very important. The second path is clearly connected to the extension, and I would like to thank Becky for bringing me in contact with farmers and hanging around in these amazing landscapes of Vermont, which I would say that pretty much looks like Europe, and I will explain later why I have this perception. So it is very important to build bridges, and in that particular Fulbright Visiting Scholar grant, the focus is on transatlantic bridges, because we have common challenges. We don't have stability. We need stability. We need growth and development. Of course, we could talk about post-growth, like Lucio is working on, and common challenges about climate crisis, failures in crops, the decline in biodiversity, plant invasions, and definitely all this turbulence in markets, in energy, in the energy sector, and all these wars that happen. So we should work together, and that's the meaning of this project. So today we will talk about some weeds. I will probably not all of you are familiar with the term weeds, so we will explore that. We will talk about agroecological weed management, which is the new scientific field. I will bring some European perspectives. I think that I can claim that I'm bringing the European narrative, because I'm the scientific project manager of a European project funded by the European Commission. We have 20 partners across 11 countries, and we are conducting experiments in 9 countries in living labs. You will see more later. And finally, I will bring some case studies, pictures, and some experience from my field with the farmers, especially in the Mediterranean part of Europe. So let's start with the weeds. So what exactly is a weed? I expect that most of you are familiar with the term, but if we go to Britannica dictionary, we can see that the general term refers to any plant growing where it is not wanted. So I'm a bit radical as an early career weed scientist, and say that no more racing to weeds. For example, we have the European Weed Research Society Symposium in July, and I'm going there, and I'm going to discuss with many people, many weed scientist fellows about that, and I will show you some advancements in a while. So you can see that weeds are everywhere. They compete with the crops. They cause yield losses. They probably disturb the crop production systems, the farming systems, but they have many ecosystem services as well. So you can see that many different people have many different definitions of what a weed is and how we should treat or manage or preserve the weed flora. So, for example, this is a very old table from 1965, and I will just highlight 3 examples. A professional weed man, so probably a specialist, an agricultural advisor, says that it's any plant which grows where it is not wanted. So basically, it's like what all consultants say to their farmers. You don't have you have these weeds, you don't want them, you don't need them, control them, or as we say, simply kill them. An enthusiastic amateur says weeds have always been condemned without a fair trial. Well, this is very hot now, so I will give a point here. And an ecologically minded person says they are opportunistic species that follow human disturbance of the habitat. And that is prevalent in industrialized systems, in heavily pressured farming systems, following conventional practices and very, I would say, non-sustainable practices. And of course, we have challenges. We have changes in weed biology and ecology due to climate change, the rise of temperatures, changes in the precipitation patterns. Also, the pressure of the agricultural practices changes how affects how the weed communities grow and behave, let's say, in the fields. And we have plant invasions. They are increased recently due to trade, due to global commodities, and due to tourism as well. So basically, it is an anthropogenic disturbance that causes more weed pressure in the farming systems. And we have noxious weeds. In addition to herbicide resistance, which is a problem that the conventional farmers with the crop protection industry created themselves. So they wanted to bring a solution, and the solution was herbicides to quickly control the weeds, increase the productivity, and have the great acceleration. So this happened in the late 60s, early 70s, and probably you know because it overlapped, let's say, with some first agroecological movements. But definitely we can claim that the organic movement started there when the crop protection industry started using mostly insecticides and fungicides and later herbicides. And of course, all of you know glyphosate, right? So we have challenges: economic factors, societal factors, and environmental factors. I'm not going into detail. I will just highlight that farmers are complaining about their income. And what we say as young weed scientists, that if you manage the weeds in the conventional way, you increase the production costs. If you manage the weeds in an agroecological way, you reduce the crop protection costs. And I will explain later with some data. Societal factors. We have lack of knowledge and awareness. I would say that we created globally 3 or 4 generations of young farmers relying on synthetic inputs, either fertilizers or pesticides. So they don't know how else to manage the weeds. They don't know how else to cultivate. So we need to focus there. And finally, all of these factors that I mentioned before. And I'm highlighting nature conservation and restoration because it's very hot in Europe, but also globally. I think United States are not part of United Nations in several COPs, but this is something different. So let's dive into synthetic herbicides. And I would like to ask you, what comes to your mind when you hear the word cocktail? Probably that, right? So I've talked with many farmers in Greece, in Portugal. I hope that I will find some conventional farmers in rural areas here. And when you ask them about cocktails, well, in the night they will say, this is my drink. In the morning they will say, this is my cocktail. So like blends of pesticides, of herbicides in our case, to make a tank mixture which is more effective to control everything. And why they're using more and more active ingredients in their tank mixtures? Because they have herbicide resistance. They are probably obliged to rotate the active ingredients in order to avoid the herbicide resistance pollution. So they make these tank mixtures in order to manage and control all different weeds. So they have different modes of actions. They are compact herbicides, systemic herbicides. They manage everything. But at the very end, they increase the production costs. They destroy all possible fauna that is out there, above ground and below ground. They degrade soils and so on. So let's say that we're in a tunnel. And at this point of the history, we are inside the tunnel. And we definitely know that the exit is out there. And it is bright, it is glowing, and it is very green. So we're in the tunnel and we have the synthetic herbicides. So we have herbicide resistance. Doesn't so well, but anyway. We have air, water, and soil pollution due to herbicides. Why air pollution? Due to spray drifts, which affect nearby crops, nearby cultivations. And this is a very big problem, especially in permanent crops. But also users and neighbor organic or smallholder farmers. And imagine being in a small land, being a smallholder farmer, marginalized, and your neighbor spraying herbicide or another pesticide, and the spray drift comes to your cultivation, and then either destroys your production or you have residues of pesticides and you cannot sell in the organic markets that are certified or any different case. We can imagine water pollution because they go into the water flow, and soil pollution because they stick on the soils. Their lifespan sometimes in some ingredients is large. So we have degradation, and I would say degradation of agroecosystems. We have health effects. There are numerous cases of farmers, especially in Latin America, suing the crop protection industry and companies and winning these battles because they used the products the way the labels gave the instructions, but they had Parkinson, they had other issues, some neurophilic diseases, and that's important. It is proven. We have the data for that. And another problem is that we over-rely to herbicides. That's a very big problem. They are harmful to biodiversity. The bees, the pollinators in general, are extremely affected by herbicides and pesticides in general, and they are linked to non-sustainable agricultural practices. I will just name three. Monocultures, which is a severe mistake. It only feeds the large commodities and the trade of countries and not the food sovereignty of the countries, in my opinion. Another one is the heavy tillage and heavy soil disturbance, because in the US, now in Brazil and Argentina, they have GMOs. Okay, they have the equipment and the machinery to do no tillage. But in Europe, this machinery is not available yet. I would not even think about other areas of the planet. So they till the soil, they spray herbicides, so there are no earthworms, there are no mycelial networks, there is no meso and macrofauna. And another very bad and harmful, non-sustainable agricultural practice is the use of mining agriculture, the dependence on mining agriculture, fertilizers, sorry. So we deplete the soil resources, we reduce the available minerals to make nutrients, to feed all this system, which is a closed loop that leads to the degradation of other ecosystems. Just an example with data. This is a comparison of pesticide kilograms per hectare in agricultural land from 1999 and 2020. So within the first 21 years of this century, the pesticide atlas here, which is very valid, compared the use. You can see that I'm starting from the US. The use of pesticides slightly increased. This can be explained by the very stable industrialized model of agriculture here. I will have some maps tomorrow in the other presentation, but the use of GMOs and the link to specific commodities and inputs, synthetic inputs, leads to that result. In Europe, as a European, I can say that the European Green Deal failed. We have not reduced the use of and the risk of synthetic inputs by half, as we promised to the European farmers and consumers. But what is really a concern is Latin America. You can see 120% more the last 20 years. Personally, as an agroecological advocate, I connect this, but I don't have the proof, but it would be a nice way to explore this. Together, I connected with the deforestation of Amazonia and more GMO, corn, soybean, and cotton linked with these inputs, synthetic inputs. Oceania, Australia is going bad as well. This part of the world does not have such an increase in pesticides, but if you see the increase in fertilizers, you will be shocked. All the industry of fertilizers is moving to China and India to support and feed the ever-growing population. So there are global problems, but we have to work together. That's the point of this slide. But why are we using only herbicides? We have so many tools. We can group them in different categories. We have new non-chemical tools, precision agriculture, many different practices. We have new technologies, different cultivation techniques based on agroecological pillars like crop diversification. And we have very competitive plant material recently and not GMO. So there is a change in the mindset of farmers. In Europe, we are working on that. For example, cover crops. Now we have started calling them slowly service crops because they bring services to the agroecosystems. Decision support systems. We don't want just to rely on technologies and give data to the high-tech companies and startups. We want to build and create free, open access decision support systems to facilitate the decision-making of farmers in order to reduce slowly the inputs, increase the resilience of their farming systems, but also change their behavior. That's about weeds. Now let's move to agroecological weed management. And let's talk about agroecology. Well, I came to the, let's say, the mecca of agroecology, and I'm aware of that. The Institute for Agroecology is one of the most known globally. So, you know the FAO definition. But for those who probably don't know, it's an holistic approach that simultaneously works and applies ecological and social concepts and principles to the redesign of agri-food systems, seeking to optimize the interactions between animals, plants, the environment, and humans, basically the one and planetary health, while also addressing the need for socially equitable food systems. So it brings the political dimensions. And we say that agroecology is a science, is a practice, is a social movement. Without all these three elements, it's not agroecology. It's something else without people, without ideological reference, without a vision. And I would like to play with AI. And I gave a prompt to AI, what agroecology is for me. I described these very complex thoughts I have in my mind, and this is agroecology for me. So, diversified food choices coming from colorful, bright, resilient, and flowered fields with permanent crops, extensive agriculture, working not only in the small scale, but in the larger scale to support the ever-growing population globally. But the most important is, in my opinion, because we are all agroecologists, let's say, to make the step up and the step out to the community, to the societies, and not just focus on agriculture and start moving slowly to the food system and cover the entire value chain. So we should start talking about healthy diets. And why herbicides are important in that discussion? Because there are pesticide residues. Even if in Europe we have slightly reduced the use of synthetic herbicides, we have the strictest standards and regulations globally, the European Union. Still, the European Food Security Authorities, EFSA, finds residues of pesticides and herbicides in the products that are going to the consumer's plate. An example that affects all of you, unless you are allergic to alcohol, they found glyphosate pesticide residues in beer 2 years ago in Germany. I'm not mentioning the companies, the brewers. So, why agroecology? And this is more conceptual because it's high in biodiversity, it's high in labor, very knowledge and labor intensive. It gives the control to humans, it gives the control to the landowners, and it's high in food productivity. And I was playing again with AI, and the prompt here was, give me, based on my description, the conventional model and agroecological model in a very steep mountainous terrain in Portugal. So you can see here, monocultures, wheat, maize only, flooded. Why? Probably you've heard about Valencia last year, they had severe floods, people died. We have climate change, temperatures are increasing, precipitation patterns, I talked about them. So it's not only that we have water scarcity and the summer crops completely changed. Now farmers rely more on their income, rely more their income on winter crops and not summer crops, because summer crops are very vulnerable to climate disturbances. But here the agroecological model, well, if a cabbage fails, if an onion fails, you'll have another source of fiber and protein. You have animals. It's more, from the aesthetic point of view, it's more beautiful, but it's also more productive. And let's talk about agroecological weed management now, trying to describe the line from conventional to agroecological. So in conventional weed management, we have the use of machinery, especially mowing, hoeing, harrowing, all the use of the equipment in the machinery to control the above ground biomass of weeds. And of course, the use of herbicide. In the organic agriculture, late 70s, people started going back and learning from their ancestors. So they introduced animals for grazing. They tried to diversify, doing intelligent crop rotations and long-term crop rotations, intercropping, and cover cropping as well. In the integrated management, weed management, which started in the 90s, I would say, and lasted until today, let's say, we have new technologies. This is an example of hot foam that I have used. So basically, we're trying to bring some innovations, some low cost, but it's still expensive equipment, machinery, and technologies to the fields in order to prioritize actions and act only where it is needed. For example, here we have the smart sprayers, so nozzles that do not cause spray drift, with distribution maps that create the noxious patches, detect the noxious patches of weeds, and they give the order to the sprayer to spray only that patch and not spray uniformly broadcast herbicide. But now we are talking about agroecological weed management, which has all these different practices, of course, with the reduced use of herbicides. Only where it is needed, if there is no other possible mean to manage the weeds and secure a yield in the crop. Even if there is no unanimous definition and commonly accepted definition of agroecological weed management, this is a definition that we now submitted and it's under review. And we say that it's a collaborative approach that involves all actors across agri-food value chains, from farmers to consumers, in co-designing ecological, cultural, and technological solutions, primarily non-chemical, to manage weeds by diversifying landscapes and agricultural systems. Because we want to have transformative and sustainable policies to prevent weed infestation, to reduce weed pressure if we have weeds in the farm, and utilize the ecosystem service of weed species. And the ultimate goal is to reverse biodiversity declines and safeguard food security. This is a very complex, very long definition, but that's why we are publishing. So I would say that one of the most important publications about agroecological weed management comes from a very large group of researchers who talked about agroecological crop protection. I will not go into detail here. It's a very complex conceptual framework, but I want to focus on two elements. When we talk about sustainable weed management based on agroecological principles, we want two things in the field: to prevent the seed set, so to reduce the production of seeds, and manage in a sustainable manner the soil seed bank. So we want to reduce the soil seed bank, weed seed bank, of noxious weeds, not all weeds, because as I will say later in another slide, weeds can bring something to the ecosystems. But I will focus more here. This is a conceptual framework, which is actually an applied framework that was introduced by Marco Esposito. He's a Marie Curie researcher. He's in Cornell now, in Antonio Di Tommaso's lab. They are doing an exceptional work, and they propose that what if we neutralize the weed communities? What if we manipulate the weed flora in the long term in a way that we reduce the herbicides, we reduce soil tillage, but at the same time we increase biodiversity and we increase the weed ecosystem services? So they approach that from two different paths. The first is to maximize the weed diversity. If you have more weeds, it is highly likely that they will compete with each other, and then you will have a very neutral, not competitive, not noxious weed community. And if you prioritize and try to select and identify which of them are noxious, you can go selectively and manage those specific weeds that cause the yield losses. So this is an amazing conceptual framework based on the new technologies and the new ecological concepts. Because we identify the noxious weed species and we remove them, either with drones, either with weeder robots, and what we have finally, weed-crop coexistence. And for me, this is an amazing agroecological message. But robots? What about robots? In my opinion, without humans, agriculture loses its purpose and direction. I think that if we start bringing more and more technologies, we will lose the meaning of our farming systems and food systems. Because we produce food, good food, healthy food, to feed people, not for just survival, but also for our cultural visions. I mean, to preserve our communities. So if we substitute, if we replace farmers, labor farmers, with this fleet of small autonomous robotic platforms, or these Darth Vaders here, we may reduce, we may eliminate the use of herbicides, okay, the use of fertilizers. But where will people live? I mean, I have many slides, but I've deleted many of them. The global population increases, and more than half of the global population lives in cities. And the food that feeds us in Burlington comes from the suburbs of Burlington and the rural areas. So if we all move to cities, who will produce for us? And that's all about agroecological weed management. And now let's go to some European perspectives to let you know how Europe performs, what Europe thinks, how Europe prioritizes its actions, focuses on the health of the population and nature, and has a long-term vision. So you can see that this is the increase of organic farmland in Europe in dots. In dots, it depicts the 2012 organic farmland. And 10 years after, you can see that almost all countries, I would say not doubled, but they drastically increased the organic farmland, because the European Union wants to have 25% of organic farmland by 2030. And it's far from achieving that, definitely, but it's a very promising value. And I will share with you something brand new, which is the vision for agriculture and food, which was adopted by the new mandate of the European Commission, which will be in force until 2029. So it coincides with the American mandate. So they asked themselves, and this is public, how can we build an agri-food system that is economically, socially, and environmentally sustainable, and thus attractive, competitive, future-proof, and fair for current and future generations? This is the stochastic inner thought that European policymakers had, and all the think tanks and the lobbies in Brussels worked the last 2 years to present that. Because they want to have a European agriculture that is attractive for new markets, attractive for people with good products, healthy products, competitive in order to be in this global run, this global marathon, this crazy marathon of trade and commodities, future-proof for current and future generations, and connected. Connected, here with the connection, they mean the connection of people with nature, the ecosystem, but also the connection of people together in their communities, in their societies. They're going to make more solid and strong communities. This is more for the researchers, but it's a very nice exercise that the Joint Research Center of the European Commission did, and they published in December. So basically, they analyzed all effects, either positive, negative, or non-significant, of many different agricultural practices, farming practices, on sustainability indicators. So you can see that there is a strong variation of practices and outcomes. So we cannot horizontally say that a practice is sustainable. This practice fits there, because based on our agroecological roots, we should prioritize the practices that fit to the place where they are applied and meet the demands and the needs and the capacities of people. So we should not give smart packages, smart agroecological packages, in my opinion, to people, and especially farmers, but we should co-create with them and analyze which of these practices and many more are working toward the implementation of all sustainability targets that we have. Just to show you here, one of my publications, how the pesticide, the herbicide load was in Europe since 1990 up to 2021. We were saying that we are doing very well in reducing synthetic inputs, but no, we are increasing. Why? Because we're going to be more competitive. And if you, that's another publication from a friend, if you see almost 50 or 60% of herbicides and synthetic inputs, I mean pesticides in Europe, come from France. Why France? Wine industry. Glyphosate everywhere. But wine industry is the most competitive. It's one very competitive, and now it is obvious in this tariff war that is ongoing that they want to protect wine, for example. They want to protect cattle and sheep ruminants. So we may have the Sustainable Use of Pesticide Directive. We may have the Paris Agreement for Climate Change, the Green Deal, the SDGs, but we are not close to reduce chemical input by 50%. We cannot involve the farmers to reduce the use of herbicides because they will tell us, and they are telling us, I've learned to do that. The market is supporting me to do that. I'm subsidized to do that. And I cannot do anything else because I will lose my profit and I will not have anything to feed my family. So we have to hear first people and farmers and try to work on more sustainable practices. And just a reflection from Brussels, from Europe. Farmers went into the parliament. They protested last year. Why? Because we have the eco schemes, as we call them. So some new subsidies and supportive schemes for farmers to prioritize good agricultural practices that work for the ecosystems as well, not only for the yields and the improvement of yields. So farmers had yield losses, of course, and they didn't have support because European Union is very technocratic and bureaucratic. It builds and creates amazing legislative frameworks, but it lacks the expertise and the details to make it happen, to realize all these goals that it sets. Compared to the US, I would say, because I'm analyzing policies in the US, the laws are very simple, but they are very experienced units, and the advisory services, the extension services, are way better than the European ones. So that's a comparison between Europe and US. So I want to talk about some pillars that we prioritize now. In Europe, we prioritize diversification. Crop diversification, crop livestock diversification in mixed systems is a pillar that the European farmers are focusing because they get the support to sow cover crops, but they already have the knowledge to do crop rotations. Not because they want to. Of course, all farmers want simplicity. They want to go to the field every year and apply the same and have stable income. But they had to do that mostly due to soil pathogens, diseases, insects, not weeds. So crop rotation came to Europe mostly due to other pests, not weeds. But now diversification is something that is expanding across Europe, especially in smallholder farms. And we're very happy about that. I would say our motto in Europe is graze, graze, graze. So just to compare. No, it was not funny. Okay, right. Yeah. So animals is the key in agroecological systems. Because bringing animals into the systems, you reduce immediately, you eliminate your weed management costs. You have animals, so you have free food for them. You feed them with the native flora, and they bring a lot of ecosystem services to the ecosystem, to the farm systems. So another policy difference. Here in the US, there is more beef, cattle. In Europe, we have more sheep. Probably they fit better to the mountainous, steep terrains, and there is more knowledge on how to have livestock with ruminants and not big animals. I would say from my experience that horses are the best grazers. So it's amazing to see horses grazing and eating. This is a picture from Sardinia in Italy, a colleague that we have there in the project. And that brings me here to talk about some dilemmas that we have in general in our farming systems and weed management. Plow or not to plow? That's a serious dilemma because we want to keep the soil covered throughout the year, but we don't have the equipment in Europe to do that. Or the fields, especially coming from the conventional fields, they are very compacted. So you need to break the crust, do some minimal tillage, and sow your crops or cover crops. But farmers still plow. This is declining in Europe right now, but we are far from saying that we keep the soil untouched. US has more experience on that because there is new machinery, there is better machinery and equipment, but it is combined with GMOs, especially in the Great Plains, in the middle of the states, in the middle of the country, with cotton, corn, and soybean. So this is something to worry about. Another dilemma, what will labor be like in 2040? We see that in Europe, probably in the US as well, in Latin America, we don't have labor workers. Less and less people go to the fields to work, or less and less people are allowed to go to the fields to work. So we think that in Europe, this will not be reversed. We will have this problem which will be more prevalent, more obvious. So we need to work on that, on solutions. How will we work toward the One Health approach? That's a farm. I invite all of you to come to Portugal. This is our experimental station at Piedade de Monte Silveira, where they have 5 different types of animals, many different types of farming systems. And we have landscapes, amazing landscapes, and we have natural grazing. So it's a very healthy ecosystem. And will AI conquer agri-food systems? Let's see. Finally, this is more for me, how will we manage weeds? So I will quickly go to some case studies to tell you, to transfer you the experience from Europe. The use of cover crop increases, and that's very positive. This is an example from Extremadura in Spain, in cherry plantations, a colleague from CCDEX, Maria Ramos Garcia. Thank you. So you can see that, probably you can see that on the left side, there's a conventional farm for many years. And here was a certified organic farm. And this picture was taken in 2021. And this guy, the organic farmer, had better production, more quality, more emphasis. And Maria took a picture this year. I don't have it. And she told me that this guy started leaving the weeds, making a tapestry like his neighbor. So the neighboring effect worked. It was very good to see that. A picture from Portugal, from the same farm I told you. And now I will talk about the ecosystem service of weeds. The farmer sown lupin as cover crop in winter. And in May, you can see this thriving, colorful, flowering, very diverse community that brings soil protection because it prevents erosion. It fertilizes the soil because lupin brings nitrogen. It fixes nitrogen. It's a biodiversity habitat, a shelter for biodiversity. It improves soil structure because it has very complex root systems and it retains water. It regulates pests and bringing beneficial pests and microorganisms. Due to high biomass, it increases the carbon sequestration and it gradually reduces the noxious weeds and the seed bank of them. And finally, amazing pollination. When I was in the field, it was very noisy. It was like being in a highway in a metropolitan city due to air traffic from pollinators. So we're coming and going. And finally, aesthetic value. It is aesthetically appealing. More research now. We observe weed flora first of all. Then we prioritize the ecosystem services we need to bridge the agroecosystems. We identify which weeds and combinations can provide them and study the interactions with animals, with humans, with the environment. And then we manage the weed communities in favor of the weeds with desirable traits to mitigate these services. And finally, we evaluate and adapt and modify accordingly. And most important is to monitor because it's a long-term procedure. And just two final examples as case studies. This is my favorite weed in the world. I did my PhD on that. It's a silverleaf nightshade. It comes from Texas and North Mexico. It's Solanum melanifolium. So farmers may see 5 different growth stages at the same time in the field due to climate change, due to its very peculiar growth. So it's amazingly difficult to control this. So farmers have more and more problems. And another last example, the king of the weeds, as they call it in the US, Amaranthus palmeri, Palmer amaranth. I have worked on that because we detected that in Greece, and probably it was coming through cotton transportation from either Italy or Turkey. This is our speculation. And we have published with many different Mediterranean researchers about that. And you can see how difficult it is to identify the Amaranthus, because you may have Amaranthus retroflexus. It is a noxious weed. It is the most common, one of the most common spring weeds. But you may have Amaranthus poly or Amaranthus palmeri. How are we supposed to support farmers to analyze early states? Because if they leave them and they reach 4 or 5 leaves, they will start competing severely with the crops. So farmers need to have training on identifying the weeds. And due to the increase of plant invasions, this is more demanding. Finally, decision support systems. As I told you before, we are supporting them in Europe, where the European Commission gives millions of euros to create decision support systems for farmers. So basically, they are real time. In real time, they collect weather data, soil parameters, and farmers are able to bring their inputs, which are analyzed, and they recommend smart irrigation, fertilization management, and pest and weed management, and many more things. And it's very beautiful to see many decision support systems coming up from research teams that are close to industry, but also to policymakers, so farmers can easily adopt them. Before going to the second part and smaller part of the presentation, because you are probably tired, I want to play a video and produce good. And ask if you have any questions so far. Yeah.
So in the weed definition that you presented, I think that you submitted in a paper, I think it said something like mostly non-chemical. I would say that some people in agroecology would disagree. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, actually, we have a debate with many colleagues about that. I belong to the more conservative group for this definition and saying that chemicals should be there up to the point that are used only when it is extremely needed. Because if we eliminate them, then farmers will not adopt our approach. Because if we'll tell them, cut all the chemicals, they will tell us, okay, that's organic agriculture. What's the difference? So we tell them, gradually try to transform your farming systems to reduce herbicides. Do all of these different practices that we bring you as a set. And if you still have an existing problem, I mean, you cannot have the yields that you want to survive, then spray. But try next year with cover crops, with mulching to reduce the weed pressure. And we think that in the long term, in the long run, they will eliminate the use of herbicides. There are other colleagues in the weed science saying that we should go directly and cut all herbicides to meet the goals of the European Commission or try to make our farming systems healthier. But it's a debate. Actually, it's very good to have this debate. Otherwise, we would have some, very big researchers saying that this is and nothing else. So now we have a way to have fun in our symposium and conference. Yeah.
Just a follow-up question to that, because what I hear you talking about is working with existing farmers to support agroecological transitions. Is it different for new farmers, the approach that you take?
I will explain in the next slides. Please keep your question. Probably it will be answered. If not, I'm here.
Yeah, you showed some horses in your slides. Are they raised for meat or are they valued for other services?
Yeah, but could you repeat, please?
The horses that you showed in these systems,
Yeah.
are they raised to be eaten or do they bring value through other services?
No, they were, yeah. The horses, these specific horses are used in for sports,
Range?
not rain,
Horse races.
not horse races. These artistic,
So like equestrian.
yeah, like the lords and the dukes go with the horses. Yeah, I don't know the word. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, we don't eat horses in Europe.
Well,
Oh, yes. When I look in Italy, they definitely.
Well, the majority of Europeans, but we respect people who do that. Okay. Yeah. So let's go to the video. It's in Italian, but I will have automatic translations. You will
Il
understand.
progetto Good, finalizzato alla riduzione degli erbicidi di sintesi, prevede lo sviluppo di una serie di tecniche agroecologiche al fine del contenimento delle infestanti. Ci troviamo in uno dei campi sperimentali del progetto Good. Questo sito ha una sua caratteristica: è particolarmente infestato dalla specie aliena invasiva Acetosella, Ocossalis pes capre. Nella nostra sperimentazione è stato seminato il triticale e abbiamo previsto di portare avanti una serie di trattamenti per il controllo agroecologico delle infestanti, quali interventi meccanici, lavorazione del terreno e spazi interfila, inerbimenti con leguminose autoseminanti, che attuano una sorta di competizione con le infestanti. Una variante innovativa, inerbimenti con leguminose, però inoculate con funghi micorizi arbuscolari, che formano una simbiosi con le radici delle piante, migliorando l'assorbimento di acqua e nutrienti e influenzando negativamente la crescita di alcune malerbe. Infine, l'impiego di erbicidi naturali, come l'acido pelargonico, che si trova in natura in alcune piante, in particolare nei gerani, da cui prende il nome, ma viene ottenuto dall'acido oleico anche nella filiera del cardo gentile della chimica verde. Ha un'azione erbicida per contatto molto rapida ed efficace, è biologico e non tossico per l'ambiente e gli organismi viventi, può quindi rappresentare una interessante alternativa ai tradizionali erbicidi chimici. Le leguminose svolgono un ruolo fondamentale nell'agricoltura sostenibile, non solo dal punto di vista produttivo, ma anche per i servizi ecosistemici che possono fornire. Basti pensare al processo di azotofissazione simbiotica che rende utilizzabile l'azoto atmosferico a tutta la comunità vegetale. Le leguminose sono anche importanti per la gestione agroecologica, nel caso in cui vengano utilizzate come colture di copertura, cover crops, cioè inerbimenti. La medica truncatula è una medica annuale presente nella flora spontanea, quindi in questo caso si tratta dell'utilizzo di una risorsa autoctona. Vorrei ricordare che nel bacino del Mediterraneo la flora è molto ricca e varia, sono presenti 30 specie diverse del genere medicano, di mediche annuali, e circa la metà sono presenti in Sardegna. La caratteristica di queste specie è di essere autoriseminanti, cioè di produrre seme, di rigenerarsi e di persistere nel corso degli anni, grazie alla produzione di semi duri, che sono semi a germinalità differita, e al meccanismo di rottura della dormienza dei semi, cioè l'aumento della germinabilità che avviene durante l'estate e viene determinato dall'escursione termica giornaliera. In un sito totalmente dominato dall'infestazione di acetosella, come potete vedere, è interessante commentare gli effetti dei trattamenti effettuati l'anno precedente. Alla mia sinistra potete vedere lo sviluppo di un prato di sulla a seguito del diserbo chimico effettuato l'anno precedente. Al centro potete vedere un trattamento indisturbato l'anno precedente, quindi con presenza di piante di sulle ma notevole presenza di acetosella. Alla destra potete vedere ugualmente una riduzione delle piante di acetosella dovuta alla lavorazione meccanica della stagione precedente. L'elevata presenza di acetosella, infestante invasiva aliena che domina questo sito, può creare problemi non solo alla coltura principale, il triticale in questo caso, ma anche agli ovini al pascolo, ai quali può causare problemi di intossicazione alimentare.
So that's a video from Sardinia, Italy, a colleague that we have in the Good Project. So now, quickly, I will explain about the Good Project, what we are doing. So we have 16 living labs working in annual and permanent crops across Europe in 9 countries in conventional and organic/mixed farming systems. So we combine agroecological with management strategies. Our main innovation, let's say, is the combination of cover crops inoculated with native mycorrhiza. I will explain you in the next slide, with different weed management practices to reduce the weed pressure. And we are benchmarking the results from the conventional and organic fields. And we see differences in the history of the fields. We have an agroecological weed management repository. Now we are building the training module in agroecology, and we will have a decision support system to recommend cover crops sowing in combination with different strategies. We are doing sustainability assessments. We will release business models and policy recommendations. So I will not explain the methodology. You can find it online. Just to focus on the center, we are building an agroecological weed management network because this is important to have synergies, which is an agroecological element as well. So we encourage a long-term and large-scale transition to sustainable biodiversity-based agri-food systems through the development of this network. This is our objective. And our impact is supposed to be the advancement of sustainable and resilient technologies to transform farming systems by testing, evaluating, demonstrating, and promoting innovative combinations of these practices. You can see pictures from the living labs. For example, this was an interview in Spain, in Extremadura, with a conventional farmer in the field of his neighbor, an organic farmer. So he came to this field, he saw the results, they discussed the weaknesses, the strengths of these combinations of practices. So we are bringing new farmers through demo events, demonstration events. Otherwise, they will not be convinced. They will not be convinced with slides. They have to see that in the busy period of the year, of course, for them, the growing season. Many people in the farm, regular meetings. So this is the approach of living labs. You know that, of course. And monitoring is important. So these are the agroecological innovations that we have. I will have results for you in a few minutes. But you can see that the University of Pisa, who is partnering this project, has an amazing protocol. We call it pre-sowing seed coating of cover crops with native mycorrhizae. So basically, we wanted to promote the native microbiome. We went to the fields, to the soils, in both conventional and organic fields. We sampled the soil. The University of Pisa, this team identified all spores, all different fungi. They multiplied them and they created an inoculum. So all partners had a very easy and low-cost practice, low cost for farmers. Probably it's not low cost in the lab, but we will work on that to apply. And we have some results to show you. And the other one is the weed distribution maps. We have drones in all living labs. They fly once or twice per year, per growing season. And we created weed density maps. So we know where the noxious weeds are because we are running some AI algorithms. So we go, if possible, to the genus level, the species level, sorry. And we prioritize the weed management actions. I will not go into detail, just to tell you that we have worked with 56 cover crops combined with main crops. And the one astonishing result was that the mixtures was 1/3 of the cover crops tested, and they performed better than single species. Of course, this was something that we expected. So it was a thumbs up research hypothesis that was verified. You can see different pictures from the experiments in Greece, Netherlands, Serbia, and I will explain you now the experimental design. So we're the second experimental year. In the first experimental year, we tested 3 different cover crops, either as single species or mixtures. And we selected through various assessments the best performing cover crop to inoculate. So these are the cover crops that the living labs selected to inoculate. You can see that most of them are rye, oats, and legumes, trifolium or orbitia, and some lupinus and mixtures. Sinapis, in general, the brassicats are not AMF FOST. They're not mycorrhiza compatible. So that's why we need them in mixtures, but the inoculation will have no effect. But we need it for many different ecosystem services that they bring. This is, you can see probably due to the light. A drone picture from the olives living lab in Cyprus that was taken last month. I traveled to Cyprus. We had our annual meeting. Yeah, that's better. Thank you very much. I wanted to focus here. You can see some strips in the infrared. These are the cover crops in the olive field. The first 3 lines have the cover crops. I think in that case it was Vitia, non-inoculated. The next 3 had the cover crops inoculated, and they were more green. There was more coverage, soil coverage, and they kept the moisture in the upper layer of the soil, because our colleagues there tested that. This means that cover crops in permanent plantations work very well. And here they also tested straw, wheat straw in the interrow. Yeah. In the interrow, sorry, in the interrow. In the tree in the row of the olive trees. And this was another very good practice to suppress the weeds. But of course, it comes with some trade-offs. For example, a problem that they have in Cyprus is wildfires and snakes. So keeping vegetation in that part of the year, I have the same reaction with snakes. Yeah, it's very dangerous for wildfires and snakes, rodents, and other insects. So this is the protocol to harvest the root samples and analyze the mycorrhiza, and just a few graphs with results. Yeah.
Did you just use one species of AMF, or like were you using a bunch of different species of?
A bunch of different species, but coming from these soil pool samples from the fields. It would be impossible to propagate the inoculum based on specific species in the time that we had. So they prefer to have inoculum. So you can see that the organic fields had more root colonization even without the inoculation. So they were more rich into microbes, into these mycelium networks. Here they analyzed the University of Pisa. They are coming from me. Here from Portugal, some results. You can see rye. Again, the results were statistically different between the conventional and organic fields, and the inoculation actually worked. So they found spores in oat as well, Avena sativa, but also in flax, in Linum ossitatissimum. But here in flax, it was a bit different. You can see that in the conventional fields, the root colonization of flax roots was very low, but in the organic, it was very high. So that's the results from the microbes. Now some results about the costs of all these agroecological management practices, because this is the first question that farmers ask us. Here is a cradle to farm gate life cycle assessment by the University of Catania, and I'm just going to straight to the number. The organic fields had almost 700 kilos CO2 equivalent, and the conventional had 59% more CO2 emissions. You can see that the fertilizers are is the factor that brings this difference. Here, I will not focus on something, just to highlight some examples, because this is a global analysis of preliminary results, that the organic wheat was performing much better in terms of its sustainability performance, based on many different sustainability dimensions. And here, in the costs, you can see that the conventional wheat was causing losses, and these are supported by subsidies, but the organic wheat was bringing more income. Why? The yields was almost the same, but here they didn't have the cost of fertilizers, and they had a bit less cost of seeds and preparation of the field.
Sorry, are you comparing a similar scale?
Yeah, similar scale.
Yeah.
Everything is, sorry, everything goes to 1 hectare, which is 0.4 acres.
When you talk about fertilizer, is it synthetic or are you referring to?
Synthetic. Usually in wheat, for example, in Greece, these results are from Greece, they apply 2 times, the basic and the side application, and many kilograms per hectare. Nitrogen mostly, but also other nutrients. Yeah.
Sorry, just to clarify the question about scale, it wasn't the sample size that I was asking about. I was curious about the scale of production and if it's comparable. My question is more about economies of scale that farmers might have access to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
You can become a reviewer of the project because they ask the same.
sorry.
Exactly the same.
Yeah.
How do you work in the large scale? And yeah, it was a commercial field. This is a commercial field. Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you can't have organic wheat. It's almost impossible because it's a very narrow row crop with only 13 centimeters distance between the rows. And it's impossible to avoid spraying. So this is a field that is under conversion to organic through crop rotations and so on. It's not a certified organic field for years. We have other results, but these are preliminary results for the first year. But we have other crops and other living labs that are certified organic, regenerated for many years, and the differences are extreme. But we need more time for analysis. Something interesting for behavioral scientists. This is the theory of the plant behavior, and we applied some nudges to people. So we asked them if they plan to reduce the use of herbicides this year, and after the nudge, if they plan to use AWM practices, agroecological weed management practices this year. And it was statistically important as a result because they were less keen to apply agroecological weed management, and especially these categories of people: female, young, well-educated farmers. Why? Because they need more support, and they know the benefits of these practices, but they don't know how to do it. That's why they are less keen to adopt it in the short run. But in the long run, you can see that it's the same. Final about this, which is an amazing result. The plant behavioral control, the personal behavioral control of organic, regenerative agroecological farmers was higher than conventional farmers. This means that they feel more ready. They feel that they have the know-how, the knowledge to apply agroecological weed management because they were many years into that alternative sustainable systems. And the other interesting result is that conventional farmers are more affected by others. These are the social norms, essentially. So the social norms are more, let's say, prevalent in conventional farming systems. Some practices doesn't matter now, just to show you that there is variability, but in some crops, in some countries, there is dependence only on mechanical means and herbicides. And in perennial crops, there is more diversity in practices, of course. And I will just focus here on some qualitative data we collected in hundreds of interviews and questionnaires. So the farmers think that agroecological weed management improves soil health, it is effective, it manages water resources, it reduces herbicide input. On the other hand, they think that the herbicides are effective, they have quick results, they are simple to use, and they are cheap. And finally, there are weaknesses of agroecological weed management. Farmers think that some other farmers, the effectiveness is low, the cost of applications is high, and there are difficulties in operation. But for herbicides, there are more weaknesses like environmental impact, herbicide resistance, pollutant, risks to human health, biodiversity decline, and so on. So It's a very complex desert. I have a very short video, 30 seconds, to show you an autonomous platform, robotic platform in France, in apple orchards. Not at the commercial scale, but it tries to be. Yeah. So it creates a mulch, basically, which is very promising for smallholders. And that's it about the project. You can follow the social media. You can send me. I can give you all information. And I will close with that. We need data and we need synergies. This is a conclusion. And why I'm closing with that? Because the farmer-specific data are staying in the field with the farmers. They are lost from generation to the next one, and we don't have access to them. The smart connected data, though, they are staying with the industry or the companies with patents and IPR, so we don't have access to them. We have access to historical data, which are freely available, and region-specific data. But you can still see here that they are not enough, because we have to work more with the farmers, where the agroecology and the production is alive. And thank you, UVM. Yeah. Hi, Molly.
Hi there.
Hi.
Looks like I'm coming through. A question: when you're doing the cost comparisons, are you counting in a premium for the organic crops? Do they receive extra income?
No, I think that the baseline was that they were receiving the same subsidies, like they were subscribing to, they were following the same eco schemes of the European Commission. So there was no difference in their support, governmental support, if I understood well your question.
It was more when the product is sold. If there's a premium on an organic product, and something related to that.
Yeah, well, in that specific case, it was a field under conversion. So a commercial farmer who tries to convert his farming systems. So basically, the price was a bit higher in the organic product. But this is in general retail prices in Greece. I know from my experience, it's 2 or 3 cents more, which probably makes no sense, but in big yields, in large yields, makes difference.
So a very modest difference. And also, as farmers are trying to decide whether to apply a synthetic herbicide, what's their criteria? Is it like integrated pest management, that if there will be a significant difference in the income from the crop, that they apply herbicide?
They apply herbicides, I would say. I've seen that in many countries, in Europe, only when their neighbors or their friends do it. So they don't act first. And then they depend on the stops, on the commodities of agricultural advisors. So they apply herbicides as business as usual, synthetic herbicides. As you know from here, specific crop protection companies have specific regions and they sell the same products. I mean, the same active ingredients. So basically, farmers depend on this closed system.
Thanks.
Thank you, Molly. Thank you very much. Anyone else? Yeah.
I saw that soil health indicators was one of the parts of your methodology for the agroecological weed management. And something I really have enjoyed, like bringing in when I'm teaching about weeds and particularly in an agroecological system is thinking of weeds as bioindicators so that weeds have a lot to tell us, right, about what's happening in the soil. And I wonder if you could just go into that a little bit more and talk about kind of how you're integrating addressing soil health within agroecological weed management, because it occurs to me that if there are underlying imbalances or insufficiencies in the soil that potentially no matter what management strategy you employ, you might not really be able to address sort of the balance of weed species and crops.
Yeah. Well, in the context of the GOOD project, we did a baseline assessment last autumn. And we all living labs analyzed the physicochemical parameters plus soil enzymes to see what is the current health condition of these fields. And as we will follow 2 years the same experimental design in the fields, we will go at the end of the third experimental year and we will have the same parameters, but we also have many optional parameters like earthworms, water infiltration, soil compaction, microarthropods, and DNA sequencing in some of the living labs. So basically, we want to go into each plot where the practices were applied and sample there and see if there are differences and map them, make some heat maps of the fields because we use the drones as well. I have in my computer, I can show you some examples of earthworms. For example, in Portugal, in the organic field of cowpea, we had 3 practices: roller crimper, chain mower, and tillage, and untreated control. So we have a map showing that the soil compaction in the short run within one growing season was much better in the roller crimper and chain mower fields, plots, compared to the tilled fields, of course. That was something expected. But we approach that through maps, if I want to answer your question, and through the mycorrhiza. So we had an extra sampling of soil this year and next year, so it will be for 2 years, to see if the inoculation with native mycorrhiza actually affects some soil health in the root rhizosperm.
So it sounds like you're looking at how some of the weed management practices might impact soil health. And
Yeah.
I guess I'm wondering if there's any integration of looking at almost like the inverse where like you try and address the soil health to see if it has implications for the weed populations.
Well, in this experiment of Portugal, yes.
Okay.
But in most of the experiments of these living labs, no, the focus is the opposite, reverse. Weeds going down to soil health impact. Yeah, we don't do the opposite,
Yeah.
only in 2 fields, I think. Yeah, because the focus is on weeds, weed communities. But
Yeah.
we also we will also analyze the weed seed banks on topsoil. 0 to 10 centimeters and then 10 to 30 centimeters, some living labs, which is, I would say, affected by the practices, but it is also an indicator of the history of the field.
There's really cool. Some farmers here are like, we have a really difficult weed, not wheat, and it thrives where there's really depleted soils. And so there are some farmers who are experimenting with just putting like a lot of organic matter down as a way of sort of trying to control that weed because it's so invasive that sort of like removal doesn't seem to work.
Yeah.
But they've had some good success just with like even just adding like hay mulch in pastures or fields and just really building up that organic matter and just that practice, even though it's like addressing organic matter in the soil has ended up controlling that weed. It's really like a cool complement, maybe.
We saw an example in a farm that we visited with Becky, an organic farmer dealing with one specific species that needs labor. So labor is not enough. So yeah, we have challenges. Right, yeah.
I don't know if there's other questions online.
No, I think
I've
it's
already
only
asked you a bunch
now.
of stuff.
They left.
Yeah, I wanted to touch a little bit on the science policy society connection to what you're doing. Because of course, like the elephant in the room in a way in terms of transitions is the size and strength of the agrochemical industry and the way that it's supported through policy, right? Subsidies you mentioned and other things like that. What do you see? I know that researchers, you're developing it and so on. There's a lot of different things going on. Do you see any kind of leverage points for shifting policy as you're getting more data, more science, connecting it to policy, and then
in the European Union or in general?
as you like to answer, however you can say.
Well, in the European Union, this science is funded by the European Union. So they invite us to present these results to policymakers, to give them policy briefs.
Sure.
So it has a sense of leverage. We leverage our research by bringing them the results which are transformed into policies. For example, we have the nature restoration regulation now.
Yeah, sorry, I was just not quite finished with the question because I'm thinking about, we're talking about also changing production practices, right? And so we know that large scale monocultures are linked to these different systems, right? And agrochemical companies, they also sell seeds. It's a kind of a whole ecosystem of industrial agriculture, right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about transitions to agroecological weed management, we're also talking about a transition to different kinds of production systems, scales, purpose of agriculture, and so on. So I guess I'm thinking in the holistic sense, how your data is influencing changes in practice, or do you see some particular leverage points that you think you can follow?
We were seeing, actually, because we are working across the value chain, from production to consumption, in these living lab ecosystems, open innovation ecosystems, as we call them. But the problem is that due to recent global turbulence, the vision for agriculture and food, as you saw, now detoured, and it goes more to the competitiveness of the sector. So again, we are back to what brings money to our pocket. So the industrialized model will still prevail. So now we have more challenges in order to convince the policymakers that nature still exists. So it's there, and we have to work with nature and not against it. But I think that the leverage point is the creation of communities of practices, like there are here the CSA. So we have the living labs on the other side. And we have to work at the same time, bottom up and top down. So the policymakers listen to the scientists, to the researchers, but without the farmers. So without working, co-creating with the communities, especially rural communities, we can't leverage our results and transform them into policies.
Yeah, this is very closely related actually, but I read a fascinating paper recently asking farmers why they were reluctant to switch away from corn and soybeans to even just some more diversified conventional crops. And they were saying, well, this is relatively easy what we're doing. We know what to do. If we have a problem, we know who to ask. It's the corn, soy, Florida rotation really, because we get to take the winter off. So with these agroecological practices, do you think it's a case of trying to shift farmer mindsets or bringing in new farmers who think differently? Or can you make this easy and turnkey enough with robots, tech and drones and stuff that it becomes the default?
Yeah, that's why I said to Ernesto that I belong to the transformative group of this agroecological weed management concept, because you have to bring new technologies, fair technologies and low cost to attract people. You have to work with existing organically certified and regenerative farmers. So we have to change their mindsets. That's why we are doing behavioral analysis in science and research, because we want to identify the intention determinants and the behavioral determinants that affect the adoption of a specific practice. So working with all farmers is important, in my opinion. But I missed the point of your question.
So you're trying to figure out farmer mindsets and behaviour and
Yeah.
how to work with that. And can you also work from the other end to make agroecological weed control a bit easier and more, automatic is the right word, using tech and robots and drones and stuff?
Okay, yeah. Well, we cannot offer the very simple packages that crop protection brings farmers. Like you mentioned, corn and soybean, we can't do that. I mean, we cannot replace one monoculture with another staple crop and bring them more agroecological perspectives. They have to change their mindset and work not only at the farm level, but at the landscape level as well. So that's where agroecology comes in and brings this connectivity and synergies within the communities to work within their capacities and based on their needs and perceptions. So we think now in these projects and in this research in Europe that we cannot give them a horizontal, a uniform package of solutions. We have to co-create with them by first asking them what are their needs, what are their opportunities, and what is their capacity. And then we co-create with them tailor-made solutions for their farming systems. I think that it includes a behavioral mindset change and influence, but I'm not sure if we can, and this is the challenge, to scale it up. How can we go to the large scale and apply agroecology? We have seen that in Portugal, we are working with farmers who are certified as regenerative farmers with ROC, for example. It's an American company. So they work at the large scale, but they also adopt agroecological approaches and practices. I try to answer from all sides.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other question? Yeah, Lucy.
Are you planning to recruit more farms to future studies? And I was just envisioning having some of the agroforestry fields in Portugal, for instance, being included with management studies.
Yeah, well, the problem with the European funds, probably it's the same here, is that they finish one day. So you have to find the next. So what we're doing here is to ensure the long-term sustainability of this network of living labs, and they will apply to the European network of living labs. But we also connect them to other funds and projects that we bring from European money. So agroforestry in Singapore.
Yes.
Great. Bye. Thank you. So in Portugal, we have Montado, which is agroforestry. So if you have something in mind,
I have something in mind, I'll talk to you.
yeah. For example, now we are talking with some philanthropy organizations to fund some research on agroforestry, but not for wood, or for productive.
Yeah, no, I was thinking
Not
about
eucalyptus.
some syntropic systems that integrate several weed management practices like together, and what could they be compared in terms, of a more systemic analysis of several different strategies together.
Yeah, we started a collaboration with a syntropic farm in Algarve. Where? In Algarve. Okay. Yeah, it's my colleague went there in a very intense workshop. So now we have connections and more experimental.
Maybe it's the one I have in mind.
Probably. I think it's only one, very famous. Probably that. Yeah. Question? No. Right. I hope that it was because people were fleeing, probably it took too much, right?
No, it's just quickly have a noon meeting, gotta run.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Alvin.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Online, and in person.
Thank you. Thank you, Molly. Molly, we should talk about policy. This is more my world now.